All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Jerry Merkins. With me is CEO of Gunner Technology, Cody Swan. What's up, Cody?
Not much, just constantly working on my New Year's resolutions, including to drink at least 2.5 gallons of water a day. So if I have to stand up during this episode,
2.5 gallons.
yeah,
That's a lot of water.
yeah, it's a lot of water. It's a
Wait,
lot of
Jesus.
water.
That's like 300 ounces of water a day.
Yep. So I have a Yeti cup, and
Are you a
it's
camel? What are you storing it somewhere?
no, I don't. I definitely don't store it. I definitely don't store it. But I have like a 30-ounce cup, and
10 of those a day?
yeah, that's right. I have little tick marks on the whiteboard.
My goodness, that is a whole lot of water.
Yeah. Yep.
Say something for the fish. I guess we'll dive right into it. The winner this week of the Country Store giveaway, by the way, which you can sign up for on Facebook, our Facebook page. Country Store Outfitters is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. You can visit them at countrystoreoutfitters.com. Is Will J from Bloomington, Indiana. So congratulations, Will. You've got a Country Store hat heading your way, along with copies of our ebooks, including the new ebook for this 10-part series, which should be out relatively soon, and possibly, if we can get them in time, copies of our Best of 2018 series. So congratulations on that. Anyone who wants to sign up for the giveaway can hop on our Facebook page and sign up for that. And while you're on our Facebook page, go ahead and answer our question of the week, which this past week, what was it, Cody?
Well, we're behind. So we had a 2-part question. This was December 20th. Was our last show. It says, what was the best gift you received? And did you get any purely virtual gifts this year? And so by far the best gift was cash, which I understand, but like it's not takes. I understand that, totally understand that, but we're looking for something more creative. So answer. No, I'm just kidding. And then any purely virtual gifts, yes. Gift cards. So,
okay, cash and gift cards.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, guys.
Because now you can obviously send gift cards without purchasing the physical card. So that was
I got some good digital goods. I got a copy of a game called Detroit Become Human for PS4, which is amazing.
Detroit Become Human?
Detroit Becoming Human, I think maybe. Or I think it's Become Human. Detroit Become Human. And it's sort of like it's a first-person game where you control an AI and you sort of have to make decisions at certain points in the game about how you're going to react to situations. And depending on how you react, it sort of changes the way the game plays out. So it's pretty cool.
Can you force Barry Sanders to unretire?
God, I wish.
that would,
Detroit Becoming Lion. I guess that'd be that.
I think he retired like 20 years ago.
He retired way too long ago. Actually, I'd rather see Calvin Johnson come out of retirement because he could still play. Calvin Johnson retired when he was like 27.
Yeah, that's right.
He still had so many good years left in him. I think because he played for the Lions and he was just sick of it. Sick of having to deal with Matthew Stafford every day.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I also got a really cool gift. My sister made me a collage. We went to this event, the Overwatch All-Star weekend, and she made me a really cool sort of like a little framed memorabilia thing with tickets and pictures and all that kind of stuff. So that was the best gift I got, and it was a non-virtual gift. So
okay,
and it wasn't cash. So that was cool. But I guess we can sort of dive into today's episode. It's the final episode of.
Well, we got to go over today's question of the week.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
So, what's one technology that you think will be obsolete by 2030? As we're almost creeping up now on 2020, basically 10 years from now, what technology do you think will be obsolete?
You know, we've talked about this. This is more of a wish than what I think is going to be obsolete. But if wires could become obsolete, that would be such a godsend.
Oh my gosh, that is like, honestly, that is the last thing I really want from technology is to remove wires.
At that point, I'm set. If there's no more wires in the world, I'm good.
Yeah, wires are the worst. And I actually made a big push after the first of the year to clean up a lot of my wires, ran some conduit.
Yeah.
Drilled some holes. So I'm trying to hide all my wires, and I've just got so many of them.
Yeah, the trouble is that there's just endless wires. The second you get something new, you've got a new wire to deal with.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? You have to plug it in. You're not gonna plug it in and unplug it every time.
Yeah, exactly. It's a waking nightmare. So get on that, science.
Yeah.
Figure out how to get rid of wires. And I guess once you figure out how to get rid of wires, if anyone could figure out how to get rid of wires, the sales would be sort of the easiest part of that. Anyone would buy something if there was no wires attached, which is the topic of the day for this last episode of the 10-part series on how to be a technology entrepreneur. And so we've sort of arrived at a point where we have a product that we're opening to the public and trying to grow and expand. And the last part, sort of the most crucial part, really, something that we've touched on throughout the previous 9 episodes, pretty much, is how to sell your product. So what's sort of I guess let's start with what the goals should be when you're trying to sell your idea.
Oh man. And we're talking about like sell the company, not necessarily sell the product itself, but sell the company.
Yeah. So what should the goals there be as far as positioning yourself the best to be acquired by another company?
Yeah. So
I would think users is probably the number one place to start, because that's sort of the data point du jour is how many users your application has.
Sure. And it's weird. We're focused on technology, and let me just tell you, having gone through this process with companies outside of technology, it is totally different. And I should say, again, we go back and forth on this a lot on this series. It depends on what in technology your product is. Meaning, if you're selling a software as a service type platform for, let's say, credit card management for large companies. So basically, it's a way for large companies to manage their corporate cards. Okay. It's not about how many users you have. It basically comes down to, what do your contracts with these companies look like? How much revenue are you getting? It's more of a traditional model when you're dealing with a business to business type SaaS platform, which basically comes down to what is your EBITDA? And so basically,
Your EBITDA, is that a type of root vegetable?
EBITDA, and it pretty much is. It stands for earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. So anyone who is interested in either purchasing or investing in a traditional type company is going to look at EBITDA, and pretty much that's what it's going to come down to. There's other mitigating factors, such as like, are your books in order? Have you paid your taxes? Like, do you have a balance sheet? Are your books balanced? Have you done proper accounting? If you haven't, you have something called a distressed asset, and that lowers the value of it. But largely, it comes down to EBITDA, and it's only kind of outside of. And by the way, the bid price will be something like a multiplier times EBITDA. So depending on like how the economy is doing and what industry you're in, it'll be like 3x EBITDA, 4x EBITDA, 8x EBITDA. It'll be some sort of multiplier on top of that. And then you start subtracting things for if it's a distressed asset and if the company's in good standing, whatnot. And then you can kind of build on top of that with, like, if you have like an all-star CEO who's going to stay on board, you can kind of like increase the price a little bit based on certain things like that. But largely it comes down to that. For this Silicon Valley thing that you're talking about, which is kind of a newish phenomenon, it really does come down to basically how many users you have, what is your acquisition rate, and what is your total pool or potential for users, and then finally what each user is worth.
And that value largely comes from engagement, right? And engagement with your application and engagement with advertising within your application or your technology.
And it's funny because I keep expecting this to die off, because it really encourages bad business practices. It's basically like what this model says is, you can run your business however you want, as long as you show a massive amount of growth in terms of people using your application. So it almost encourages you to run your business in a bad way. And kind of like what they're saying is, we know how to run a business, so you just show us growth, and then when we take you out, we'll get your company in order. Like, it's such a weird thing. It's like, give us raw material and we'll make a diamond out of it. Whereas in traditional, they're like, kind of like, we want to purchase a diamond. It's just a really weird way of looking at it. So Facebook would be that kind of, they were getting valued for acquisition based on their users and things like that. Mint is another one, a good example, which got purchased by Intuit. They were valued based on their users and how many people were using the application. Because the bottom line is it's free. So they're like, we can't show revenue because it's free. So that's why kind of Silicon Valley got out of this valuation by EBITDA type scenario.
So for the potential technology entrepreneur out there, when they're thinking about selling their idea, step one seems to be have a massive user base to promote to potential buyers.
Yeah. That's certainly, if you're building like a social network, if you have a free product, then basically, yes, you just want to show massive amount of growth and engagement. And engagement would be like, how many of your users post a comment every month? Because your potential acquiring company doesn't want to see just a million users that don't do anything, because that could have been you just purchasing users from India or whatever just to sign up to use your product. And the reason is, by the way, is because, again, like large companies have much more tentacles. So they see this, they kind of like see this, and they like rub their hands like this, and they're like, oh, you have 2 million users. Well, we can advertise to 2 more million users. We can get data from 2 more. Not only can we sell advertisement for 2 more million users, but we can collect data on 2 more million users and kind of make our company more valuable to advertisers by offering them user data, kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's why it works.
Well, I was going to say, the interesting thing there is that you just need that pool of users to pull the data from, and then once you have the models built, the models are usable sort of in perpetuity until maybe they become stale. But even when they become stale, you're talking months or years down the line. So the real value is just getting the user data initially, and we sort of saw that with the Cambridge Analytica stuff that came out with Facebook, where the Cambridge Analytica guys got, I don't remember how many profiles it was. It was tens of millions, I think, maybe even in the hundreds of millions. And they built sort of these really intricate models based off that data to predict how people would vote, voting patterns based on region, voting patterns based on certain affinities that they were then able to use to sort of target their advertising for the 2016 election. But the thing is, it's not just the 2016 election. They can use that data to target for the next probably umpteen, if I were to estimate, election cycle. So it makes sense that these companies want users, and especially user data, because that's sort of the bread and butter of these companies. So that's the role of, or that's the origin of the import of sort of number of users that your technology has.
Yeah, and on that point, like, if you're a white nationalist today, the chances that you're going to be a white nationalist in 6 years are pretty good. And not only that, the chances that your children are going to be white nationalists are very, very good. So and again, I say that like because Cambridge Analytica was hired by the Trump organization, and they were looking to stir up controversy kind of in these things. So they were able to identify the people they wanted to identify immediately. But now that they've identified them, they're going to be able to build profiles based on that data for years and years and years to come. Which, by the way, again, to your point, is in acquisitions like this that we're talking about, you always hear in business school that an M&A or merger or acquisition is all about like culture fit. And, all this stuff about like, is it a fit for the business model, blah, blah, blah. In this case, they don't really care because they just really want the data. So you have instances like Condé Nast buying Reddit. And they don't really care if Reddit fits in the business model or the people who work for Reddit fit their culture. They just want that data. Yeah. That's really what they're buying access to, is data and ongoing data.
Yeah, and you see that we've talked about the big tech players before in a previous episode. That's going back to February, March of last year, where we talked about the big five. And a lot of people think of Google as a search company. A lot of people think of Amazon as a retail company. all these companies are data companies. All they do is process massive amounts of data and figure out the best way to use that data, leverage that data to target their product at the right people.
Right. Google in particular, I mean, well, Google and Facebook in particular, Amazon actually sells stuff to you. They provide value to people. And I mean, they provide tangible value. Like Google, you're like, oh, well, they're so useful because they provide search, which is great. That's true. Google is great. You can find stuff, but it's not, they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're building a profile of you based on what you're searching on, and then they're selling that data to advertisers. So
I would even argue that Amazon is sort of treading towards that selling people stuff, getting people to want stuff and selling them that stuff that they've gotten people to want, as opposed to selling stuff that people need.
Well, they're
based off of like massive amounts of data that they've acquired over the years.
They're certainly good at building profiles on people.
No which to your point, there is tangible value there. They're actually getting a book instead of something sort of ethereal, and temporary. But
yeah,
but at the same time, data is sort of like the backbone of their business.
And Amazon is one of the biggest consumers of other companies' data as well. We saw that in the news about them brokering agreements with Facebook, because again, they want to take their data and augment it with like Facebook's data. So like Facebook has like location data, for example. So Amazon will see like if you've been going to like Home Depot, you may be in the market for like DIY stuff, and you're gonna start seeing DIY stuff on when you go to Amazon as a recommended kind of service. So yeah, Amazon's definitely in the data business. Don't get me wrong on that front.
Yeah, which this all seems like kind of an aside, but it's actually crucial to understanding how to sell your idea, because the basis of your idea really has to be, at this point in this landscape with sort of the major players who are going to acquire companies, what they're looking for is this. If this is the type of business you're in, which is sort of the freemium model, or even just an entirely free application, what they're going to look for is a wealth of usable user data that they can, I guess, pipeline into their product or leverage for another product that they have.
Right. And then again, if you're selling a utility, again, like a B2B type application.
Yeah, which is sort of like my next sort of sidestep would be, what about these other companies where the model is more, we're selling products to actual companies? It seems at that point you would want a roster of paying clients who you can point to and say, this proves the concept, and we have X number of future leads, Y% of which will probably convert. So the growth potential for this idea is there as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of a good segue into our next series, which we're going to go over like the biz dev process and like actually getting your house in order, especially if you're like a B2B type company, which is a great insight in this, because an acquiring company wants to see how many contracts you had, the length of the contracts. Like it's a lot more valuable to an acquiring company if you've had 100 contracts for 4 years than maybe 1,000 contracts for 6 months, kind of thing. They look at the average value of that contract, of those contracts. If the average value has been going up or going down, they look a lot at how many contracts have been canceled. And again, but the backbone of all that is going to be that EBITDA value, where they're probably going to look at the last 3 years of EBITDA, generally speaking, with the last complete year being the big item of focus for them.
And growth year over year, how important is that?
Very, very important, especially if you're a newer company, which all startups are, because then that can give you a little bit of leverage off of the multiplier on the EBITDA. So like if you show that EBITDA has been increasing tremendously, like year over year, you could say, yeah, our EBITDA was only this last full year, but you're saying 3x. I think it should be 5x, because look at what EBITDA was the year before that, and then look at what it was before that. So we're trending up, and you'll get pushback on that. They'll say, yeah, but that's standard for new companies. But you also don't want to show flat for three straight years either. So that's a big one. And again, like
we were EBITDA, but now we're EBITDA.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you sell. Um, and I guess sort of as a segue into that next series, in terms of, I don't even know if we should sort of dip our toes into it now, but are there any tips as far as, maybe this will be a preview for the upcoming series, but tips on how to uh, actually sell your idea, how to get the word out, how to sort of, what's step one of that process?
So
Or what's
again,
like, maybe like an overarching, like 50,000 foot overview of the process. What's sort of the sort of broad steps that you need to take to, within 3 years have a company that's going to sell a B2B product that's going to sell or be acquired.
yeah. So if you're going the B2B route, then you're in that more traditional realm. And what you can do is you can hire these brokers, and these brokers, they operate as a percentage of the sale, and they're well, I'm sure some of them are shysters, but most of them aren't. Like, they will flat out tell you, you'll turn over your entire books to them. You'll say, here's my product. Here's my company, rather, not my product. Here's my company. What do you think? And if they don't think that it's worth their time, because again, they're going to get a percentage of the sale, they'll be like, you know what? And a lot of them will say, here's what you need to do in order for us to get interested in you. But if they are interested, then they will go out in their network of very large companies, and they will find someone interested in your company's service in or product, and they'll get it basically. They'll do everything for you, up until including getting you to the negotiating table. And a lot of them do it very clandestinely. So you don't want people to know openly that you are looking to sell your company. You don't want to advertise that. So these brokers use their internal network to kind of pre-qualify potential bidders or potential acquirers without telling them what your company is. They'll say what your company does, what industry you're in, what your metrics are, but they won't say this is Gunner Technology until they've like ascertained genuine interest from that company. So they basically screen them and have them sign an NDA before they let them know who your company is. So that's a good route for the traditional B2B. And what I tell people is, don't operate as though you're going to be selling your company. Operate as though you're going to be creating a company that's going to go all the way to IPO. And that way you're going to do things where you're going to do things in the correct manner. You're going to make sure your books are balanced. You're going to make sure you're focusing on kind of long-term growth. You're going to make sure that all these things that if you had to run the company for 20 years are going to be in place. And actually, that's going to be what they want to see when they get to the negotiating table anyway. So don't, even if your goal is to sell your company, don't make that your stated goal, and make your stated goal to be operationally long-term, as though you would be running it for indefinitely. And a lot of those pieces fall into place if you do that.
I think that's a great place to leave this episode, because it's sort of a taste of what's to come for the next 10-part series. Just a lot of in-depth expertise on on that entire process, basically.
And one other thing about that I kind of I want to make clear. I was kind of saying, like, if you operate in your company as though you're trying to make everyone replaceable, that's a really good way to set yourself up, including CEO on down. If everything is kind of process oriented and each piece can be replaced when the acquiring company takes over, that's going to be big for them, because they probably don't want to keep everyone on. So if you can show them this is what everyone does and this is how they do it, that's going to be appealing to them as well.
Just to wrap up the 10-part technology entrepreneur series, if I were to, I guess, have sort of a closing thought or a closing word, it would be, don't be afraid to jump into it. Don't be afraid to try out your idea. Don't be afraid to take the risk and actually try to build out something that you've wanted to build out for years and years. I would say it's the risk you take in spending the money, spending the time, putting the effort in to build out the idea vastly outweighs the regret you'll have if you don't ever try to give it a chance. I don't know if you have any other closing thoughts on the the Technology Entrepreneur Series?
Yeah, I mean, try to find a mentor, because there's a lot of stuff that even if you have an MBA, you'll learn by fire, and if you can avoid learning by fire, that's even better. So try to find mentor. People like to help. So find someone who's done what you want to do and kind of pick their brain as much as possible. We talked about it. Advisory boards are good for new entrepreneurs. That'll kind of help you stay focused and stay motivated. And then the whole thing of never get too high, never get too low. You don't want to get too depressed when things go wrong, and you don't want to get too excited when things go right, because either way they can change at the drop of a hat.
And I guess one final thing to add, just as a little bit of a plug, I would say if you have an idea that you want built out and you need help building it out, don't hesitate to contact Gunner Technology, especially with our 30 days free. There's really no risk in getting in touch with us, and even just sort of bouncing the idea off of us to see how it could be built out. Definitely give us a shout if you have an idea. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream, and that's going to do it for the 10-part Technology Entrepreneur Series. It's been awesome going through that with you guys. Make sure to tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the first episode of our next series, which is going to be basically a 10-part investigation on the entire biz dev process, which we sort of have a lot of experience in this past year, growing our own business. So definitely tune in for that next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Hop on our Facebook page and sign up for the Country Store giveaway. Country Store is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. You can visit them at countrystoreoutfitters.com. And while you're on our Facebook page, go ahead and answer our question of the week, which this week, Cody, remind them what that is.
What's one technology that you think will be obsolete by 2030?
So hop on our Facebook page, answer that question. Check out the blog post for this episode at gunnertech.com. Our ebooks are available on iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Kobo, and anywhere else ebooks are sold. The podcast for this episode will be available on iTunes. And check us out next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. I'm Derry. That's Cody. We'll see you next week.